Alright. I just got back from the dentist and my lip is still pretty numb. I don't think I'm talking weird, but if I sound weird, that's what it is. Full disclosure, this is one of my favorite installments of this franchise. Top 10 for me. Hell, I'd even say maybe even top 5. I absolutely love this movie. It's funny, it's full of really cool action, the narrative is compelling, and the performances are great. Even though I think Taika Waititi is a pretty hit or miss director nowadays, he struck gold with this movie. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and if you're new, check out the channel and let me know what you think. Let's dive into Thor Ragnarok. Let's just be honest, none of us would consider the first two Thor films to be among the upper tier of the installments in this franchise. I enjoy aspects of both of those movies, but both I would consider to be quite mediocre. I remember watching the Hall H presentation leading up to the end of Phase 3 and seeing the announcement for Ragnarok, and I was sort of underwhelmed. At the time, the character of Thor was sort of stuck in this limbo. I liked Thor, I thought Hemsworth was great in this role with what he has been given, but it's no secret that this character had sort of become stale. He seemed to shine more among the expanded casts in the Marvel team-ups such as the first two Avengers films. So I didn't know if a third Thor movie was really in anyone's best interest. There was also the fact that, at this time, I hadn't really ever heard of Taika Waititi. I didn't really know who he was. He was sort of this unknown director outside of, the independent film space. So I really didn't know what to think. I had low expectations, to say the least. I was interested in taking this character in a different direction, though, and the additions to the cast, like Jeff Goldblum, Karl Urban, Cate Blanchett, and even a cameo appearance by Cumberbatch, got me a little hyped. These were all good ideas, I just didn't know if they could pull off reinvigorating this character this late in the game. I will be the first to admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong about this movie. They pulled it off. Who knew that Hemsworth was so goddamn funny? That really is the highlight of this movie, I think, letting him improvise with the cast and allowing his comedic chops some space to thrive. And look, I am of the opinion that the MCU gets sometimes way too silly and relies on comedy way too much, especially as of late, and I stand by that statement. But what Ragnarok did, that Waititi absolutely fucking fumbled in Thor Love and Thunder, we'll talk about that later, was he struck this intricate and impressive balance between comedy and drama, something I think that is extremely difficult to do. I mean, Goldblum is hilarious in every interaction. The dude is a legend. Hiddleston and Hemsworth's chemistry is at an all-time high, and they just bounce off each other with such silly and funny moments. And this goofy brotherly banter really emits through in this film comparatively to the last two. It was sort of lacking. You got the sense that they cared for each other, but you never got that brotherly bond, and it hits home here. Even Blanchett gets opportunities to drop some dark, funny one-liners, and as silly and over-the-top as this movie can be, there are some real moments of drama. This movie boasts a moment in this franchise that has always stuck with me. It's a moment that gives me chills every time I see it. Thor and Odin, their relationship is complicated, to say the least. Thor, once considered by Odin to be his worthy successor as King of Asgard, has continued to distance himself from that notion. Thor is a man without purpose. He's not sure where his path will take him or who he even wants to be, but he does know that being king is not in his interests. This fact seems to have disappointed Odin. And throughout this series, you're aware of the love that Odin has for his children. It's obvious, but he never states this aloud. You also get the feeling that he holds some resentment or disappointment towards them, especially Thor. In the climax of Ragnarok, Hela has Thor pinned and has all but beaten him. He's exhausted, out of ideas, and then he gets engulfed by this vision. He meets a now dead Odin on a separate plane of reality. The two share a brief conversation about Asgard and what Thor needs to do and about the survival of his people. Thor admits to Odin that he's not as strong as Odin was and he can't accomplish this feat. Odin shoots a glance back at his son and confirms to him that he isn't, but that he's actually stronger. Thor quickly jumps back to the present where he blasts Hela with an insane amount of lightning before leaping from the balcony, decimating her forces on the bridge below as Immigrant Song blares in the background. This scene is beautiful and it's one of my favorites in this universe. The message that Odin sends to Thor is simple, just a few words, but man does it hit you in the feels every time. That whole interaction, Odin confirms his love and his pride for his son. He believes that he's the man to lead these people out of the darkness that they're facing. And Thor just going apeshit after being inspired is just epic. The slow shot of him descending on the bridge is beautiful. There are many moments like this throughout as well. Valkyrie's initial encounter with Hela, watching her sisters die as she can't do anything to defend them. Odin when he sits down with Thor and Loki one last time before passing on. There are plenty of good dramatic moments, and what makes this movie great as opposed to its follow-up is that the comedy never seems to undercut the drama. These emotional moments are allowed to breathe. You're allowed to feel them. Something that is sorely missing from Love and Thunder. Speaking of beautiful shots, this is probably one of the prettiest films in this franchise. We all know that the MCU isn't really known for incredible cinematography or anything like that, but Ragnarok boasts some amazing and gorgeous shots as well as some very creative set designs. I really dig the whole 80s aesthetic and the neon color saturation. It's something I never really thought would fit this character, but it works so well. And you can tell the artists and the set designers took care to make Sakaar as visually intriguing as they did with Asgard. The action in this movie is miles ahead of anything we've seen in the Thor films up to this point. Obviously, the standout being Thor and Hulk's gladiator fight. It's action-packed as well as hilarious. The break when Thor tries Natasha's lullaby gets me every time. In the finale, I feel like everyone, Thor, Hulk, Valkyrie, Loki, Heimdall, even Scourge, get their time to shine and show off some very cool heroics. The other aspect that I don't think this movie gets enough credit for is the ideas it introduces around Loki and the Hulk. I know some people don't love where these two characters currently stand, and I understand some of those complaints. I'm actually one of the few who thought Smart Hulk was a cool idea. Granted, it could have been done better, I get it, but the idea of Bruce being stuck as the Hulk and then the ramifications that come because of that throughout the next two appearances is interesting. In Loki, look, I absolutely love Loki's transition. I've seen so many people complain that they ruined this character, but look, the best aspect of continuing characters is seeing how they grow and change. Loki can't be the god of mischief forever, it would get boring and stale. Thor calling him on his bullshit in this movie was a fantastic first step into a new arc for this character, and I appreciated the swings that they took with both of these. The narrative is enjoyable, albeit a little jarring at first, with Odin just now mentioning Hela, but I think Waititi and Marvel make it work. You not only realize that Odin covered up her existence, but also the true history of Asgard. You can see that the past is something he's ashamed of. When Hela returns, he reveals all of that, allowing for Thor to help tear it all down for his people to start anew. This helps make Hela a really compelling villain. Not only does she have a personal connection to our hero, but she creates an interesting dilemma exposing the tragic events that this empire was built upon. Thor wants to save his people, his home, but realizes he has to destroy what was to create a better future. Plus, Blanchett just chews up every scene that she's in. She is a lot of fun in this role, and you can tell she had a blast making this movie. I adore this movie as much as I did upon my first watch. It certainly isn't perfect. While I enjoy the comedic aspects, I will be the first to admit that there are some jokes that just fall flat or that just are downright not funny. But this movie re-energized a corner of this universe that, until this point, felt somewhat forgotten. This movie made Thor cool again. It gave Hemsworth a platform to show the full range of his talents, and we saw a side of him that not many of us knew existed. This movie is an absolute blast, and I get excited to return to it every time I rewatch these movies. After the blunder that was Thor 4, I hope that Hemsworth finally gets to return to this character and receives the send-off that he rightfully deserves.